Today I'm going to attempt to pull the control arms out, get the springs and control arms out. So let's get started here. So I moved my jack stands. I keep forgetting to get my other jack stands from my dad's every time I'm up there. So anyway, this is free and turns, and I think the ball joints feel pretty good. I think I'm going to grease them up and then check them out a little bit better too, and then when I take them apart I can really look at them. But I got to get this sway control off, I got to get this off, separate the joint, get this off. Yeah, getting the tripod down in there is not happening. Well, so far things have been coming apart without stripping or busting. When was the last time you took a shock absorber off and nothing busted? If this was a Michigan car, yeah, that would have had to come off the torch. And it just came right undone. And I'd be willing to bet these are the original shocks and they still have dampening left. They're still, you know, pretty stiff, considering I believe they're the original, factory original shock absorbers. And even these came off without busting. I'm just flabbergasted these didn't bust. They always bust. They're usually busted before they need, you know, they bust while they're on the car being driven. And, you know, that's a lot of times you got to replace them because they're busted. But both sides, the other side's over right there. Both sides came apart. So now I'm working on, I'm going to separate this joint, get that off, and the bolt, get my spring compressor in there. I want to get this separated before I put the compressor in there, because the spring will help push down to separate that. And that is the thing that was jammed in the coil spring. Now I have both the ball joints, as you can see, separated. I loosen the nuts up, and then I actually hit this one first. And when it pops and I hit this one, you know, just take a hammer and just wrap it. A few good ones and they pop off. Did I show this too? I also removed the stabilizer bar, just undid the nuts and lifted it out of the control arms. So basically when I put the jack under here and take the tension off, I can undo this nut and lower the jack down. The control arm will come out and the spring will fall out. So I don't know if this shows up or not, but I did put the spring compressor in there. Now I get it in there easy as I put the top here, and then I just kind of turn them up the spring with my fingers and then get the bottom hooks in. And that is compressed, and I'm going to undo this nut, and then I'm going to lower the control arm a little bit here. And then that spring should move this down. Yeah, there the spring's out. So let me turn the camera off and I'll get that out from under the car. So there's one nasty old worn out spring, and the control arms, just I got to get the bushing, you know, take the bolt out so I can get the bushing out. And then this control arms, just let me get this nut off and the spindle will be off. There we go. And I'm going to put the nut back on the ball joint so I don't take a chance on damaging the threads on the ball joint. The ball joints are perfect. They're not all loose. So I'm going to reuse the ball joints. And I'm going to get the control arms off and put new bushings in. Well, I would definitely say the new springs are the correct ones. They sent me a catalog too. Nice of them. These are that's what they are. They're 8224. Now we're on the driver's side. I got this separated, tie rod end out, stabilizer bar off. So I'm going to get the, I'm going to sweep up the mess because I'm going to have to crawl under there a little bit, put the spring compressor in, and then we'll get this spring out, and then I'll work on getting the control arms off. And just to show you the tools, hammer, little punch, that's drive cotter pins out that were stuck, 1/2 inch impact extension, 3/4 impact, half impact, 15/16 impact, 9/16 impact, 15/16 box, a 3/4 box, 7/8 box, side cuts, needle nose, vice grips, penetrant, motor oil just to lubricate threads, and an impact gun. So that is essentially, I think these are 15/16, 7/8, 3/4, and then these are, I believe those are 5/8 maybe, 3/4. I think they're 3/4. Yeah, they're 3/4. So it's pretty cut and dry. It comes apart pretty quick and easy. I can take these little brackets off too and bead blast some, then I can clean the frame up a little better there. I take as much crap off the frame as possible. Probably take the front bumper and grill off before I start painting the frame and the engine compartment. Alright, let me get back to work here. Let me get this spring out. Let's not forget this valuable tool you're going to need. And notice how those are different heights. That's because when the coil, you're biting one coil there and one coil there, so one end's higher than the other. So I'm going to get this up in there and we'll get it compressed and away we go. I'm going to try and show you this one-handed. So can you see the end of the spring compressor up there and up there? I feed that piece in about here, so it's hooked on here, and then I just turn it with my fingers up the spring, thread it up the spring as high as I can, and then I have the bottom one as low as I can on the spring, and I look to make sure they're hooked over the coils, and they are on the top and the bottom. And then I just hit it with my impact gun. It's okay. I'm going to compress the spring. There we go. And now I'm going to put the floor jack under the control arm here, just because, in case this isn't totally free, and undo the remaining nut here, and the spring will be out. And there we go, the spring is out. Pretty easy, huh? Really need two hands to keep the spring from scooting around. There we go. Let me get my spring compressor out of there. There we go. Both sides are apart. Spring's out. Spindle's off, so I can bead blast that, bead blast that, bead blast that. All, everything that comes off the car is going to get bead blasted and painted off the car. So, I can spray up in the spring pocket now really well. And get those control arms off. I can get those engine mount brackets off. See the control arm bushing right there. There you go. Yeah, it's got some cracks and a little uneven, so yeah, it needs to, you can see more on the top right, it's pushed down a little bit from center, so definitely needs control arm bushings. I just cleaned these up so I can measure them to try and get the alignment somewhat back close. But look at that, I just hit that super quick with the wire wheel. That's clean bare metal, not a skerrick of surface rust left on it. Everything just cleans up super easy on this car. This is how I'm measuring them. So I'm just going up against the control arm about the center of the bolt hole to the edge of the chassis there. Alright, after doing some measuring there, that's 53/64. And I'm going to write it right here because 53/64. 64. Is that a number? And I'm going to write it here too, just in case that gets worn off. 53. So that's the front one. Now I'm going to measure this one. That one's a 1/2 inch. 16/32 is a 1/2 inch, and 32/64 is a 1/2 inch. So it's right on a 1/2 inch. So that is what we'll call that. Yep. Wrote it down there. Don't panic. It's not going to ruin the car. Alright, I did the measuring here too, and this one dead center to there is 51/64, and this one was 5/8. And I wrote it down there and there just in case that gets worn off. Kind of a hole there now. You can see these are what, I'll unscrew it. I just screwed it in there to keep it in place. That's what goes up underneath here in the chassis. And this is what you loosen these bolts to do the front end alignment, as I've probably said a dozen times anyway. But I'm just gonna, hard to do things with one hand. I'm just gonna thread that on there just so it doesn't fall out. Take these nuts off, and then I can drive the bushings out, and I think that the ball joints are good. I'm leaving them in there, the original riveted joints. Nothing wrong with them, perfectly good. So look at how I can clean this up so nice now. Get these off, you just take those out. Now you can see really good. We needed to replace the control arm bushings. You can see how hammered out that one is and how rotten this one is. So within a year they would have probably failed. So I just left that bolt out just to kind of, so you can kind of see what a hammered out control arm bushing looks like. And then this is part of the bushing. This, see how there's two layers of steel? This steel down here is part of the bushing. So I'll take these nuts and washers off. I'll just take an air hammer and just ram that thing out. And then I'll bead blast these. I'll have to do something to protect the ball joint. And paint them. While I was in the engine compartment taking those things apart, I took the front brake lines out. This goes across the cross member. That originally went to the master, and that went to the two-wheel cylinders and the rear brakes. But I'm putting a dual reservoir system on, so I won't be using this anymore because the front and rear brakes will be isolated from one another, so there'll be a proportioning valve there. I'll probably get one off a 67 Ford or use a 67 Ford valve so it bolts in there and looks somewhat correct. So that'll give me a pattern though to, you know, because this line's still essentially going to be the same other than maybe this end. So I may have to just wait to bend that until I get the valve. That is absolutely unheard of. This bolt came right out. So one of them's got to be tough, maybe the other one. And I'm just floored. This is the lower drivers. That's where the spring goes. It sits right in that pocket at the end of the coil. These are the bolts for the shock absorber, which goes up here. This is where you fit the shock and the spring compressor through, and that's where the stabilizer attached and the spindle. This is the bolt that I just took out, and really, I mean, this is probably like that from being on jack stands that pulled back, but it's a little cracked. I mean, they would have probably lasted another 5 years or so, but I'm not going to come this far apart and not change them. That's just nuts. So I'll probably get the bushings out tomorrow and start bead blasting, cleaning so I can paint, and start getting this cleaned up so I can paint. This is just hanging there. I took the other lines off. I got to get that bracket off, get that bracket off, get the bumper off. You know, lots of stuff to do yet. This control arm's not wanting to come out. The bolt is seized in the bushing, like, which typically happens. It's loose, the bolt loosened up, and I can got the nut off and put it back on because I'm beating on that with a hammer and running it. From the other side there's a bolt. It's just a bolt, as you saw. So I put my impact and run it one way and the other way, just kind of run it back and forth rapidly to try and break it free, and hammer sometimes as I'm running it. Alright, this one's being true to what control arms are. A pain in the butt to get out of the frame rail there. So I beat on it enough to where I could get it's like a lug nut, the stud that holds those in. And I got the splines out of the frame. I got it beat out a little bit. And I was running an impact, and I can get it to turn in the steel part of the bushing, and it just doesn't rip free from the rubber. They just don't. So it's turning in the metal, I'm sure, because if it ripped out the rubber, it would be all over right now, because I really gave it a lot on the impact gun. But I soaked it with penetrant, and I fooled with it for about a half an hour. So I'm going to kind of wrap up for the day, call it a day, and tackle that tomorrow. It's you know, getting a little late, and I want to get this video up, so that's kind of where I'm at. That part there is stuck in this part here, and you can see those little burrs on the end there. That's where it smacks into the chassis. So I'll let it soak overnight. I'll give it some more tomorrow, another maybe 15 minutes, and if that doesn't do it, my favorite way to get those out when they don't undo is the acetylene torches, but that's not always the best way. The second way is a plasma cutter. I could probably get a little neater cut and not damage the frame at all, or I could get a Sawzall, you know, and go and get the bolt through there, but that's too time consuming. I'm gonna horse with it again tomorrow, and we'll update the video on that in the next video, but you can see it's getting pretty stripped out. Alright, so if you like the video, hit the like button, and if you enjoy my channel and want to see this Galaxie eventually go back together and be one piece again and drive down the road looking all nice and pretty, subscribe to my channel. And thank you for watching.